Alrighty, welcome back everyone to our very last Elevate Lane County Working Wednesday in our spring series. Today's career readiness webinar and our entire spring series this year was sponsored by our partners at Selco Community Credit Union. Thank you, Selco, to your dedication to student success and education. My name is Lizzie Gray and I'm a project coordinator for Connected Lane County. We spent each Wednesday this spring with a local professional who walks us through a new career readiness skill. And joining us today to tackle the topic of job application A to Z is Claire from Cafe Yum. Thank you for being here today, Claire. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claire Malmstrom, and I am the Director of People Operations for Cafe Yum. And so what that is I'm in charge of everything that has to do with the employment experience. And a large part of what we do is hiring and recruiting for our restaurants. I hope many of you have had an opportunity to come to our restaurants. We are a local Eugene-created, Eugene-based restaurant company. And over the years, we've expanded to 24 restaurant locations in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. So it's been very exciting to see our growth throughout the years. And I'm really excited to talk to you all about this topic. And I was thinking about where all you are in your job search.
Yeah.
And everyone remembers their first job, and so it's an exciting thing to embark on. So hopefully I can give you some great tips and suggestions on what to expect and how to make the best impression during the interview process. So I have a presentation. I'm going to share my screen.
Awesome. And while Claire is doing that, I just want to remind everyone who's tuning in live that we can't see or hear you, but we invite you to type any questions that you have for Claire into the chat box, the Q&A feature, or raise your hand and we'll unmute you so you can talk to Claire live. All right, Claire, go ahead.
Great.
And I can see your screen.
Great. So I wanted to start off and talk a little bit about the job application process and what that looks like. And it can look a little bit different for every company. Everyone has their own little nuances and process that they follow. But in general, once you submit your application to an employer, generally what will happen next is that they will reach out to you in some way. They'll schedule an interview, you attend that interview, and then they'll make a decision about next steps in the hiring process, which typically, hopefully, means a job offer, or they will choose another candidate. And then if you do get a job offer, then you would, the next steps would be the onboarding and orientation process. So that's the new hire paperwork, all the nitty-gritty details of starting your new job. So after you schedule an interview, there's a couple things that are really helpful for you to prepare in the event that an employer contacts you. And first and foremost, you want to be as available as possible. If that employer reaches out to you, they want to be able to connect with you as quickly as possible, getting you scheduled, getting you to come into the restaurant and be able to meet you, or I say restaurant, I'm going to say restaurant, that's my business, but going into the place of employment, and they want to meet you as soon as possible. And you want to make that coordination part as easy as possible. So a couple tips with that is make sure your phone is on. One thing that I see a lot of times is I call someone, and I think we're all familiar with, if we don't recognize a number, we send it to voicemail or we don't necessarily answer. So consider answering that call, especially if you've known you've put out a few applications into the world. If not, make sure that your voicemail is set up. I often reach people who either their voicemail hasn't been set up or it's full, so I can't leave a message. So that's very important. Make sure that's fully functional before you start applying for jobs. Sometimes employers will choose to either contact you by email or maybe a text message. So again, just making sure that you respond as promptly as possible. Either establish push notifications on your email so that you know when one comes in as soon as possible, or just check it regularly. I know a lot of folks aren't really in the habit of checking email on a regular basis, so that's just a good tip to be connected during that process. And then another great tip is just to be as flexible as possible. have as many times and as much availability to be able to interview. Make it, again, as easy as possible for that employer to schedule the interview with you. Another great idea is to start thinking about what you're actually going to wear for an interview. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that may mean for the jobs that you're applying for in a little bit later in the presentation. But if you know that you need to have certain items to be professional and prepared for your interview, it's good to start thinking about that ahead of advancing. And if you need to get some new clothes or purchase or borrow things, do that in advance.
Borrowing's a great idea.
Yes,
yeah,
definitely. So what should you do if you don't hear from an employer? So you submit your resume, then let's say about a week or so, and you haven't heard anything. This is a great time to follow up. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. Certainly in the restaurant business or a retail environment where they have a public facing location that you would be working in, it's always a great idea to go in and see if you can meet the manager. What I would say is that you want to be a little cognizant of the times that you go in and try to meet with that manager, because for example, in a restaurant, if it's during the lunch rush or the dinner rush, they're going to be very busy and not necessarily have time to meet with you and really have that face-to-face interaction. So pick a time that is slow, or if you're not sure, maybe if you go and you see it's really busy, just come back at a later time to see if you can make that connection with the manager or a shift lead or anything. Oftentimes, the reason why that's important too is employers get a lot of applications for people, and if they can put a face with the name and they have a really great interaction with you, you're polite, you're respectful, all of that, that makes you stand out and differentiates you from other candidates that may just have a paper application.
Absolutely.
Some jobs that you might be applying for may not necessarily give you that ability to actually go into a physical location and meet someone. And in those cases, what I would say is that if possible, maybe give a call to that company or send an email just asking about the status of your application. And I would do this once. You don't want to be hounding someone for information about your application. Follow up once, maybe twice, depending on how they respond. And then if you don't get a response after that, don't take it personally. There's lots of reasons why you might not get a job that really have nothing to do with you as a person or a candidate. There's scheduling needs, availability. There just may be someone else who has a little bit more experience or has the right set of experience. So it can be really hard to sometimes during this process to take that rejection. And I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind, is never take any rejection that you get personally. And probably there's a reason why that has very little to do with who you are.
Claire, is it appropriate? So if I was to get rejected from a job, or let's say I made it all the way to an interview and I still didn't get the job, would
Sure.
it be appropriate to follow up with the employer to just say, thank you for the opportunity. Is there something I could improve on? Or I don't know. Does that feel appropriate?
I think that's definitely appropriate. My caveat to that is just, you may not get an answer, or they may not be able to disclose those reasons why, but particularly if you've met with someone and you've had an interview and you had a connection with them and you feel like they would be able to give you feedback, I think that's a great thing to do, is to follow up and say, hey, is there a reason why I wasn't a great candidate, or is there something else I can do in the future to make me a stronger candidate? I think that's a great question to ask after the interview process for that feedback.
Okay, great. And I would put a disclaimer out there too. If you are feeling rejected and you are disappointed and frustrated maybe with a process or a company who chose not to hire you, sit on it for like 24 to 48 hours. Really think hard about what you want to say. Because I do think that so job application A to Z, all the way to Z, they're still, I don't want to say judging you, but they're still, you're still interacting with a potential employer. So to just do it as tactfully as possible.
Absolutely. And that's a great point too, is just because this particular position right now wasn't the right fit or the not an opportunity that the employer was able to pursue, doesn't mean that in the future it wouldn't be. And so you definitely want to maintain that professional, respectful relationship because it might be an opportunity in the future.
That's a great point.
So attending an interview, a few tips and tricks on that is to arrive early to the interview. And by early, I mean 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I would avoid arriving too early to the interview. Again, hiring managers are often busy and have a lot going on, and it can be a little bit disruptive if someone arrives too early for an interview. So I think the sweet spot for when you should arrive is 5 to 10 minutes. Certainly, if don't arrive late, do everything in your possible to be on time, be prompt, be a little bit early if possible. But certainly if you are running late, you got stuck in traffic, or there was something that just was outside of your control delaying, please contact that person as soon as possible and let them know that you are running a little bit late and when you can expect to be there. Certainly if you may need to reschedule, but communication is definitely the key if you find yourself running a little bit late for an interview.
Yeah, that shows too that you respect that person's time.
Yes, absolutely. So dress professionally for the position that you're applying for. And I always find this a fun topic because when I was growing up, my parents told me that I just had to dress really nicely and like really professionally. And they didn't really tell me that I should consider the job that I was applying for. And I recently was doing a mock interview session with a group of students, and they were supposed to pick an employer that they were interested in applying for. And there was a person who was dressed really, like they were, shopped at Hot Topic. And I was like, well, maybe that's not what I would choose for an interview necessarily. But I actually interviewed with that person, and they were applying for Hot Topic. And I thought that was really great. And it was really illustrative to me because if I were that manager trying to hire someone who looks like they could, would fit in seamlessly at the store, it was a great choice for that particular job. Similarly, maybe you're applying as a receptionist in a fitness club or a gym or something. Go and see what those individuals wear, and maybe dress a little bit nicer than what those positions are. But I think the idea is, you want to show that you would fit in, that you would blend in and be a great employee and could represent the brand well for whichever employer that you're applying for. But in any case, regardless of what that looks like, definitely wear clean clothes, make sure that they're neat, that there's no rips or tears or holes in the clothes. You still want to project that professional image, even if it is a little bit more specific to the employer that you are applying for.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a question in the chat about dress and like wardrobe.
Yeah.
Christian asks, do you have tips for what to wear if I don't own a lot of nice dress clothes?
Yeah, I think what we talked about is maybe borrowing. Do you have someone who could lend you some clothes? I know thrift stores have a really great inexpensive way of finding clothes that would be suitable for interviews and on a budget. So I think those are my main tips for that is, see if you can borrow, see if you can get them inexpensively from a thrift store or other discount retailer. Ross Dress for Less, I think, has pretty good, or Marshall's, stores like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said about just making sure that what you're wearing is clean. If maybe you don't have an iron, but hang it up in the bathroom while you take a shower to let the steam at those wrinkles. So
yeah,
just making it look like you've put in the extra effort, you're taking this seriously. And I would also add Google like interview clothes for rent or for free or for teens, before you go to a job interview, because I think you would be shocked at how many nonprofit organizations and other organizations specialize in that, and making sure that you are not going to be denied a job just because you don't have nice clothes, like fancy clothing. So yeah, type it into Google before you do it, just to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh, sorry, there's another question.
Absolutely.
So talking about online interviewing, so a video interview, what should you wear to an online interview?
I think the same thing. I mean, obviously they're only going to see probably, the top half of you. So that makes it a little bit easier, but I would still dress exactly the same way that you would dress for an in-person interview.
Yep, I would agree. And I know that there's this running joke about only dressing professionally from the waist up, but you have no idea what might happen during that interview. If your little brother runs into the room or your dog knocks the door open, you're going to need to get up to close that door. So don't have PJ bottoms on.
That's a great point too. Yes. And to that point, make sure that you're interviewing in a quiet place where you're not going to get a lot of disruptions, and that the chances of those incidents happening are minimal too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if that's not possible in your home, so if you have a 1-bedroom house with multiple siblings, you could try to choose a time when maybe they're at the park, or you could even, I know the library has different rooms that you can book. So you could try kind of sequestering yourself in a quiet space, even if that's not at home.
That's a great point. So again, going on the Google theme from Googling stuff is researching and preparing for interview questions. Google is a great resource, and it's always great. Although you can't always anticipate what questions are going to be asked, there's a lot of common interview questions that most employers ask that you can prepare for, and making sure that you have an answer ready for those questions. And I still do that, when I'm interviewing. I ask a lot of questions for all positions about things like, what's your greatest strength? What's your greatest weakness? Who's been your best boss or biggest mentor, and why? So things like that. I think it's a great resource to prepare for those questions in advance and make sure that you have an answer. The other benefit of doing that is that it'll help with the nervousness. It's very nerve-wracking interviewing and feeling like you're being put on the spot and not knowing what to expect. So being able to prepare will help ease some of that nervousness that just naturally comes with interviewing.
Yep, absolutely.
My next point is just being genuinely interested in the job. Don't apply for jobs that you just know you have no interest in working there. Nothing seems special about this, or it seems exciting about this position. I would really recommend that you don't even waste your time in filling out those applications for those jobs, because it probably is not going to be a great fit. So when you are applying, think about those employers that there is some sort of personal connection for you for that position, whether it's the company, their values, maybe the particular position. It's really great if you can have a genuine interest in the work that you are applying for. And, sometimes you might not have that, or you may not know what that interest is, and that's totally okay, and almost expected, particularly if you're entering into the workforce. It is absolutely okay to not know what you would like to do or why you're applying for that job, but find something interesting about that job that gets you connected is the most important thing. And ask questions. To me, that shows that a candidate is interested, that they're engaged in the conversation, that they're enthusiastic. And, a great question to always have in your back pocket is, what do you like most about working at this company? It engages the interviewer. They're usually flattered to talk about, their job and their experience and all of that. And it gives you an insight about what the company is like. So that's just a great simple question to have in your back pocket that you can always ask. And the last tip that I would have about interviewing, or second to last, is show your best self. It's okay to be you in your and show who you are as a person and be genuine in that. But be your professional, respectful best self. So you're not having a conversation with your best friends. It's not going to be that informal, kind of that familiar. Talk to the interviewer like you would your teacher, or a trusted family member or a friend, or someone who you have a lot of respect for and you really value. So have that level of professionalism and respect in how you talk to them, but it's okay to share your individuality and your personality within the interview process. And lastly, relax.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, it is scary. It's scary. No matter how many interviews you do, there's always still a little bit of nervousness and anxiety that comes with that process. So just take several deep breaths before, just relax, try to be as calm as possible during the interview, and smile.
Yeah.
So,
yep. Those are great tips. I love all of those.
Great. So after the interview, so you wrap up the interview with the manager. A great question to ask is when you can expect to hear back from the manager. And then that will kind of give you a sense as far as what that time frame is for them to make a decision. Thank the interview for the time. And again, just showing a lot of respect and gratitude for that opportunity to interview. One really great tip, and this doesn't happen all that often, so I think it's a great tip that often gets overlooked, and it just really makes you stand out and shine as a candidate, is to follow up with a thank you note. And that can be a quick email. If you have their email contact information, just telling them that you really enjoyed meeting them, you're excited about the job opportunity, and you are excited to hear about the next steps in the process. I think that just goes a long way in the interview process, regardless of whether you get the job or not. And then again, I can't stress this point enough. Don't take the rejection personally. Like I said before, there's so many different reasons and decisions and things that go into making hiring decisions. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad candidate. It doesn't mean you interviewed, the interview went really bad or anything like that. Just take that experience and learn from it. So take those nuggets away from it, even if it was bad. What could you have done better? How could you have prepared differently for that interview? It's all a learning opportunity, and will serve you well in the future, regardless of whether it ends up in a job offer. So the job offer. So hopefully you just nailed that interview. You've attended all of these presentations this springtime. You're ready to go. You get that job interview. So what can you expect from that? Well, usually the hiring manager will reach out to you and they'll give you a set of information. So they'll tell you what your hourly wage is. They will hopefully tell you what you expect to work each week as far as the number of hours, what your anticipated schedule is going to be, and then other perks and benefits of the job. So it could be, if you work in the food service, so a meal benefit, retail discounts, paid leave of some sorts, insurance benefits. That would be great if you got those, and a lot of other sorts of benefits that come from you working at that particular employer, as well as when you can expect to start and the necessary paperwork to be able to get started.
Yeah, I would say too, and I've made this mistake before once, in one of my first jobs, is making sure that the job that you are offered is being given to you in a written format. Over the phone is great, but end that call by saying that you look forward to receiving your job offer via email, so that there are things in writing. And I have a question for you, Claire. At what point is a job offer negotiable? I know that I've experienced that later in life, that a company offers you X amount and this much paid time off, and in some cases you can come back to say, I'm sorry, but I would like to counter with this amount or this much time off. Is that something you would expect to see from an entry-level job at, say, Cafe Yum?
Sure. We have a pretty standard employment package for entry-level team members or crew members that we hire within the restaurant.
Mhm.
So to be perfectly honest, there's not a whole lot of room for negotiation. What I will say is it doesn't hurt to ask.
Okay.
You may have a lot of experience within a particular industry or in a particular position. And if you don't ask, the answer will always be no. So it doesn't hurt to ask and make your case for it. Not just ask, if you, for example, if you have no experience in a position, you get offered a particular wage,
Right.
Have a reason why you're asking for a higher wage, whether it's I bring, X amount of experience, this particular skill to the position, I have this amount of flexibility in hours, any of the things why that would justify why you might get something different than what's being offered. So don't take it personally if they say no. A lot of it is, particularly with entry-level positions, is pretty standard and routine, so there isn't a lot of negotiation, but it does not hurt to ask.
And if you speak a second language, be it that you're a heritage speaker or that you are conversational from schooling, or you've made it up to like Spanish 5, that in most cases that is a justification for a raise. So make sure that whoever is hiring you knows that you speak a second or third language, at least conversationally.
Another great tip along those lines is, so maybe when you initially get hired, maybe they don't negotiate your pay or benefits, but a great question to ask is, when can it be negotiated? Yeah. So maybe you can ask, hey, can I have this reevaluated, or can we have a conversation after the 90 days of my employment and reassess as far as whether I would be eligible for a pay raise. So that might be a great question to ask if at that moment and at the time of hire, it isn't something that can be negotiated.
That's a great point.
So starting your new job, so you've got the job interview or job offer, you've accepted it, and here's just some things to keep in mind as you prepare to start. And the most important thing that I run into is gathering the essential documents needed to be an employee. So that means the I-9 documents. If you're not familiar with the I-9, it's the form that employers use to verify that you are eligible to work in the United States. There's a list of documents that are acceptable to prove that eligibility. Most commonly, what people bring in is a valid US passport or a driver's license or state issued ID, along with a social security card and a birth certificate. All of those have to be original documents. Of course, there's other options. So certainly if you don't have one of those options, you would want to ask for, there's a form, a sheet that lists what you can bring in. And there's certain requirements as far as that they need to be valid, meaning that they're unexpired, and they have to be original documents. So what we run into a lot is that either people don't have those documents, or they've lost them, or they're stored with a parent who lives in a different state, and that just takes some extra time to get those documents and get everything in place, which means that your start date is going to be delayed. So particularly, I would not wait until you get that job offer. I would start gathering those documents, or at least making sure that you either know where they are, or you can get them if you don't have them during the application process. So but just know that every employer is going to require these documents at the start of your employment, if not before.
We fill these out. We hire a lot of students through our organization, be it for mentorships or internships. And so we are filling out I-9s with students all the time. And I would encourage anyone who gets the job and knows that they're going to have to fill out this required paperwork, this tax form, that you are going online and Google federal I-9, and then yes. The PDF of the document you're going to have right in front of you when you go in for this first day. You can find it online and you can look through those lists. And something that shocked me was that school IDs yes. are acceptable.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a license yet, or you don't have an Oregon ID or a passport, I know that not many students have passports, so you can bring your school ID.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then the other item that I would recommend starting to think about is, what are you going to need to purchase before you start your job? Typically, that tends to be things like shoes or certain apparel items, possibly some tools if you're entering a trade. So that's a great question to ask your employer if they did not already discuss it with you is, what do I need to start my first day at my job? And they will tell you what you need to purchase. And make sure that you start having those items. A great thing to do is, I know it can be quite an investment sometimes to get those items, and we're working to get money and we don't necessarily have money to purchase those items. And I think that's a great conversation to have with your employer too, and say, hey, I'm really excited about starting. I just am not able to invest in those things right now. Is there either items that I can borrow in the short term until I get my first paycheck? Sometimes they can do a payroll draw or other sort of loan to you in order to be able to purchase those items. Or they may have a program where they can purchase them on your behalf and then deduct it out of your paycheck. But certainly if they are requiring you to purchase them and you need help, definitely feel comfortable having that conversation with your manager to try to work out a solution to that. And then just communicate promptly with your employer. So similar to at the beginning of the job application process, where you want to be available, you want to communicate. If you're going to be late, you let them know. If anything comes up in between the time that you have the job offer and when you start, that is a change either in availability, or maybe you can't start that first day, please reach out to your manager as soon as possible and communicate that with as much notice as possible. Most managers are pretty reasonable. They just need some time to make sure that they can plan and have other coverage, or make sure they can reschedule if necessary. So communication is just really the key with any job. That you, even after you accept the job and you're on the job, making sure that you communicate, if you're going to be late, if you need to, change a shift or whatnot. It's really important to make sure you maintain that good and early communication with your employer.
Yeah, and I would loop that all the way back to the beginning of your presentation to just emphasize that when you're coordinating, either sending in your application via email, or you're responding to the hiring manager to say thank you or to set up an interview time, these are all parts of your application. So treat them as professional emails, throw in a salutation, make sure you're signing your name, punctuation, capitalizing your letters. Take it professionally. It's best to be overly professional than make it look like you're chatting with a buddy.
Absolutely. Or texting with a buddy. Yes.
That too. full
words, full sentences, no emojis. Yes.
True. Yeah. No smiley faces.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yep.
So I will be available for questions if you have any about my presentation. I just want to put in a plug for Cafe Yum. We are actively hiring for all of our restaurant locations right now. So if you are interested in Cafe Yum, please consider putting in your application for us. It's cafeyum.com/employment. You can get our application there, and we'd love to have you on our team.
Yeah. I would love to work at Cafe Yum if I didn't have a full-time job. I was thinking about when you were, you said apply for a job that interests you, be it the mission, the what they sell, and I was thinking about too, if I had no connection to a job, I might go into that environment just to see what the employees, if they look happy. And every time I go into a Cafe Yum, the atmosphere is relaxed. The team members look like they get along well. People are smiling and laughing, and I think that says a lot about an organization.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I feel the same way. I'm happy to work for Cafe Yum, and we're truly a mission-driven organization that I feel is a positive influence in the community around us, not only in the food that we serve, but the environments that we create for our team members and for our guests. And as well as our community outreach, we do a lot of donations to food banks and to schools, and that's where we drive a lot of our marketing. So it's great to be part of our company and knowing that it is such a positive force within the community. And I would say that we offer a lot of career opportunities for our team members. Certainly we have a lot of people that are with us for a period of time because they're going to school and they need a part-time job, and that's great. And we're happy to have team members for that reason. But we've certainly had team members that have been hired as a crew member in our restaurants, and now they're directors in their company and hold positions, really great careers within our business office. So there's clear opportunity for even someone who joins as a crew member at an entry-level position to be able to make a career out of within our company.
That's great. So I am going to put out a call for questions. Claire, maybe we can stop sharing so this
yes
everyone can see our faces nice and big.
Hey.
I know that's what everybody wants. But I have a couple follow-up questions, so I'll just put the ask out to students. Start noodling on what you'd like to ask Claire, put them into the chat box. If she addressed everything, that's totally fine, but we do want to make sure that we address any questions that you have. So a couple that I have are about the actual job application itself. Many are online, many are still paper applications. And so because you're just filling in boxes sometimes, so open fields that you're typing in, do I still need to use capital letters and periods and things like that?
Absolutely, to the extent possible. I know sometimes there's a field that may not allow for a full sentence, and certainly, that would be an exception. But again, just as we discussed with thank you notes or other communications with your manager, use the most professional language possible. So yes, capitals, periods, punctuation, full sentences if possible. And I would say be as complete as possible too. Don't leave things blank, don't skip over things. If there is a field and they're asking you to fill it out to the best of your possible, best way possible.
So you just segued right into my next question. But so what if there's a field and I have no idea what it means? Mm-hmm. Just maybe make my best guess, but whatever, don't leave it blank.
I would say don't leave it blank. Okay. Or if it doesn't apply to you for some reason, you can put not applicable.
And -A.
And -A is fine, okay. Or type out not applicable. So I think just do your best possible. Or if it doesn't apply, put NA.
Okay, that makes sense. You might try to, and maybe I'm just much more of a like I'm just naturally a problem solver, but use Google. If you see a field and you don't know what it means, copy that question, paste it into Google, and see what you find. It's incredible how much is out there that that could just answer the questions that you have, or
absolutely
get you onto the right path so you have an idea of what it might be.
Absolutely.
So we talked about following up after an application. Can you give me just a really rough estimate of about how long it takes a company to get back to people after they've closed a job opening?
It really depends. It depends on the business. Yeah. It depends on the industry. What I would say in the retail and the food industry right now in particular is we need people.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to hear back the same day, possibly, maybe, at least within a couple of days, I hope. So you may hear back really quickly and the process may go really fast for you if those are the types of jobs that you're looking for. If you're in a different industry, I would say, a week, 2 weeks would be a reasonable time frame. And actually, I think that's a great point, is you may never hear anything.
Right.
And that's the reality of it. Hopefully, most employers do at least try to send out a message. What I've seen a lot of times is when you submit your application, you'll receive a little message either by email or on the screen saying what you can expect as far as when you'll hear from them. A lot of times they'll say, we will contact you within this time frame if we are interested. Otherwise, we're not, essentially. So keep an eye out once you submit your application for either an email or that sort of language, which can give you that expectation as far as when you can expect to hear from an employer.
Okay, great. And I just thought of something too. Check your spam folders.
Yes.
The emails are getting really good at filtering out spam, but there are still mistakes. So I would definitely check your spam folder. Okay, so I'm applying for a job. There's an application. It does not request or even mention a resume or a cover letter, but the way that I'm sending in the application allows for me to add them. Should I add them?
I would go ahead and add them. You don't have to, depending on the environment, and this is where it gets a little bit fuzzy. Some employers may really look to see that, others may not care. So if it gives you an opportunity to add it and upload that document, I would suggest go ahead and upload it.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like it can't really hurt. If anything, they're going to review it and be like, oh, wow, they went the extra mile. Worst case, they just don't read it.
Exactly.
Just look at your application.
Yeah.
Okay. So we like to ask this question to most hosts just because you're all from such a wide variety of industries. But what do you look for when you're reviewing a job application?
Yeah, that's a great question. And particularly in our industry, when we're hiring for crew members and people to work in the restaurants, we have an expression called hire for the smile, train for the skill, in that we aren't necessarily looking for someone that has 20 years of food experience. Like that's not the requirement, or even 1 year or any food experience. We're looking for someone who has a great attitude, is enthusiastic, wanting to learn. And so it's totally okay if you only have volunteer experience, or you've only, had school activities that you've participated in or anything. I mean, something that shows initiative or interest. That is okay. What we want to know is that you are going to be positive and enthusiastic and really able to learn and curious and motivated to learn what the job is. So to the extent that your resume reflects that, definitely that's truly what we're looking for.
Okay, that's great. Any red flags on an application or a resume? Like how many typos will you look past?
And it really depends on the job. I think we give a lot of grace for typos or, things like that. I think we do try to look for that positivity and that enthusiasm within a candidate. What I would say, this is a really good question that I think will serve you well throughout your career, is don't badmouth previous employers. So a lot of applications ask, why did you leave a position? Or, what was your reason for leaving? And a lot of times what I see is, oh, I had a really bad manager, or, oh, they treated me unfairly, or whatever host of reasons, whatever negative reason, do not put it on there. And that doesn't mean to say that that isn't true. There's lots of bad managers out there. There's lots of bad employers. They probably did treat you unfairly, but that's not the reason that you want to put on your resume. So find another reason, find it, or spin it in a way to make sure that it's positive. Or, just saying, looking for another opportunity, that's perfect. You don't have to say anything about your previous work environment. And, it just, I think for me, that's the number one flag versus any other host of things that can be on a resume, is that when people start bad mouthing their previous employers.
I think I'm so happy that you said that, because that was a lesson that was taught to me really early on that has yet to come up, I think, in any of these webinars or our industry tours. And I think it is so important, because whoever's reading your application, they don't know that boss, so they don't know that it's true. It might just make you look like you're involved in drama in the workplace. And so it's not going to read well. And like you said, it could be completely valid, but like persevering through that and flipping it to be positive, or just to say, looking to grow under different leadership, or looking to experience X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Keep it positive. Amen.
Yes.
Yeah.
and be complete. I think we covered that, but you know what, if someone fills out their application and it's sloppy and difficult to read, if you're writing, a lot of it is online now, but you know, it's difficult to read, or you know, incomplete, you're missing fields, you know, to me, what that says is that person doesn't necessarily care about the position, or they're not willing to take the time to complete it fully, which may be an indication of how they'll perform on the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're filling out a paper copy, ask for a couple. Give yourself a rough draft.
Sure, that's a great tip.
That's a lot of pressure to get it right in pen, and very few people have whiteout. So
yes. Thankfully, it's mostly online, so it's not a handwriting test or anything like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Claire, so very much for your time and insight today. I'm so happy that Cafe Yum was willing to participate. And
absolutely. So thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun to talk about this topic, and I wish you all luck in your job searches. It's a great time to look for a job. There's lots of hiring going on, so good luck. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them or connect with you offline.
That's wonderful. Thanks again, Claire. And thank you to all of the students who have tuned in live this spring. We will miss you this summer, but we will see you again in the fall. We hope you all have a wonderful summer vacation. All right. Bye, everyone.